This video will investigate the cause, epidemiology, pathophysiology, and clinical presentation of the different kinds of skin cancer, and you may start to think twice about spending too much time in the sun. First, to understand skin cancer, we must be refreshed on the structure of the skin.
The skin covering our body is divided into three major components: the epidermis, the dermis, and underneath the dermis, a fat layer. Between the epidermis and the dermis is a basement membrane, and just above that you'll find basal cells and melanocytes. Within the epidermis, there are cells called squamous cells.
This introduces the main classes of skin cancer. Firstly, cancer of the basal cells, which commonly appear as pearly or scaly coloured lumps as seen here, and grow slowly over months or years. Secondly, cancer of the squamous cells, which appear commonly as thickened, red, scaly or scabby spots or lumps. This kind is much more common with increasing age and tends to progress over several weeks or months. These two classes are the most common forms of skin cancer. Finally, melanoma, which is cancer of the pigment-producing melanocytes. Melanoma is often irregularly shaped, raised or flat, and commonly dark in colour as seen here, however colour can vary. Melanoma is however the most serious class of skin cancer and progresses quite quickly, and is responsible for the majority of deaths by skin cancer. For this reason, the remainder of the video will focus on the pathophysiology, epidemiology, and clinical signs and symptoms of melanoma.
When we expose our skin to sunlight, normally melanocytes produce a pigment called melanin along finger-like projections towards the surface of the skin to protect our DNA by absorbing those UV rays and dispersing the energy as heat. However, overexposure to sunlight, like this idiot trying to get a tan, comes at a significant cost. There is plentiful evidence showing strong correlation between UV exposure and melanoma incidence. UV light, particularly UVB, the most carcinogenic, causes the formation of pyrimidine dimers between adjacent cytosine and thymine bases within the DNA, ultimately causing a mutation. UV exposure, in combination with genetic predispositions, increases the risk of developing melanoma. 25 to 50% of people with a family history of melanoma have a mutation in the CDKN2A tumor suppressor gene, which results in uncontrolled melanocyte proliferation. 80% of fair complexion and red-haired people have impaired melanin production, which gives no UVB protection, increasing risk of melanoma. The number of moles or nevi also is linked to increased risk, and a rare genetic condition known as zomatosis pigmentum, where DNA excision repair mechanisms are impaired, also increases the risk of melanoma. This brings us to the progression of melanoma. It first begins as a benign nevus where there is controlled proliferation of normal melanocytes. Next it becomes a dysplastic nevus where atypical melanocytes proliferate. Then melanocytes gain the ability of radial growth, growing horizontally. The mutagenic melanocytes lose adherent molecules, allowing vertical growth where malignant cells invade the basement membrane and proliferate in the dermis. Finally, the melanoma reaches metastasis, where the cancer spreads away from the site of origin to the lymph nodes, lungs, and brain. Melanoma is diagnosed differentially from other skin cancers based on the ABCDE method: asymmetry, irregular borders, color, diameter greater than 6 mm, and elevation and evolution. Melanomas are divided into the four classes as seen here. Finally, the epidemiology of melanoma. In 2012, Australia had the second highest incidence rate of melanoma behind New Zealand. In 2016, 13,280 new cases were estimated to be prevalent, and the male versus female percentage was 59% versus 41%. Melanoma also is a huge issue in young Australians. However, the Australian Bureau of Statistics has found that there has been a decrease in prevalence from 1982 to 2016.